Hello, everybody, and welcome to the United Stands. I'm Mark Goldbridge, and we're going to be talking Marcus Rashford, the real Marcus Rashford. And I've got probably the best person to do this. Welcome to the show, Henry Winter.
Hi there. Thanks for inviting me on.
Absolute pleasure. One of the most respected journalists in the game at the moment, and somebody that has been following, I think you've done 9 World Cups, Henry. Yeah. Is that right now?
Yep.
Yeah, and also a very good around Manchester United. You've been very pro around Marcus Rashford. That numerous things have been said over the last few months, but also and around the Glazer movement and the fans, and a very respected person within the Manchester United fan base. Of that, there's no doubt, and it's a real pleasure to have you on the show. Really, we sort of reached out yesterday to speak about the Marcus Rashford situation, because I know that you've done a few pieces on Rashford and have spoke very glowingly about him. And I think that in the absence of being able to get anything from Rashford or his team at the moment, I just want to try and be balanced on this. And, there's a lot of negativity around Rashford, and I just think it's a good idea for our viewers to speak and listen to somebody who probably has a bit more of an insight into behind the scenes and what Rashford's like as a player. First of all, what is your initial reaction to this, storm on Friday about Marcus Rashford's tweet saying it's abuse? It's been going on for months. And then people like ourselves saying, well, look, there is abuse out there. I think when you've got clips of people saying that he's feigning injury, I would take that personally as a player. But from our point of view, it's just he's not played well all season. I don't think that's abuse. So what's your take on that?
Well, clearly there's a difference between criticism and abuse. I think legitimate criticism from a journalistic perspective, from a fan's perspective, and you see more Manchester United games than I do, but when I've watched Manchester United and I've seen Marcus Rashford not tracking back with the diligence that Ten Hag requires, that his teammates require, that the fans expect, then I think that's a completely legitimate line of criticism, and Rashford would accept that. I'm not his spokesman. I haven't spoken to him for a couple of years or so, but as someone who admires him, I find some of the toxicity in some of the comments. I mean, was it one of your comments you described him as like a wheelie bin with no wheels? I mean, that's you can't personalize it that much, particularly with the platform that you've got. You're a journalist, you're a good observer, but you've got this platform, and I think for us on our side of the fence, you and me, we actually have to be fair to players, and we also have to appreciate, first with Marcus Rashford, that there's a very good player in there. You saw that last season, player of the year, 30 games. Tactically, he's a better player when he's got Luke Shaw there. He seems more confident. We've seen that for club and country. I think it was about sort of a year ago that you put out a very good tweet that when there was all this debate about should he get this new contract and what would he be worth if Manchester United sold him then, and what he would be worth if they sold him, when he had a longer term contract and commitment to the club. And I think the figure you put on it was about north of 150 million, which was a legitimate
mad, isn't it?
Take. But that shows, the point I'm trying to make is that shows the type of player and the type of talent you've got there. I mean, in my sort of few dealings with him, what came over very strongly was how much he loves the club. You can see that. I mean, his mother, Melanie, remarkable woman, was talking the other day about the sort of the sacrifices they made and the sort of journeys they had to go to. He didn't come from the easiest of backgrounds. So I think there's two elements here, but they're actually completely tied up together, which is one, you can talk about Marcus Rashford, the player, and his body language as it's being perceived and criticised. And you can also you have to talk about Marcus Rashford, the person. Now, I don't know him particularly well as a person, but he's always struck me as slightly introverted, someone who needs support. It's different from Harry Maguire. Everyone says, oh, look, Harry Maguire took a lot of stick. Harry Maguire is a strong individual. I mean, I've criticised Harry Maguire on issues with club and country, and he's always sort of come out. And there's no, he's a stronger person, I think, mentally than Marcus Rashford. People sort of throw in the sort of David Beckham, and I can remember France '98 and the effigy that got burnt about Beckham. But this is a different age. There's no social media then. I mean, I went on, when I knew I was coming on your program, and thanks for inviting me on your show, because you reflect a lot of the concerns of the fans, and you're very much a sort of modern platform and the future of journalism in many ways. But when I knew I was coming on, I actually went and had a look at Marcus Rashford's latest Instagram, and one of the reactions, the first reaction to, I think, was, you'd have been there, that fantastic Manchester City goal when Bruno Fernandes laid the ball off, and that was Marcus Rashford at his best, absolutely not thinking, just confident, smashing that ball into the City net. What a goal it was. And I think it won goal of the month. So he posted that quite rightly, proudly. And the first comment was, "You're the worst number 10 in Manchester United's history." Now, on the basis that numbers go back to about the mid 1920s, I worked out there'd probably been about 60, 65 number 10s in Manchester United's history. And when there was a recent poll of top 10 number 10s in Manchester United's Premier League history, and there being quite a few, he came third behind Van Nistelrooy and obviously Wayne Rooney. So look, there's a good player in there. I think he deserves a little bit more respect. But I think for Manchester United fans and for you to bring the best out of Marcus Rashford, I do think he needs that support. The flip side of that is he's got to track back more. He has got to sort of do far more. His body language isn't great. That's a legitimate criticism. But the toxicity, the wheelie bin stuff, the worst number 10 in Manchester United's history, I don't think that helps any player. And just one final thing I'll say on your fans. In my dealings with the fans, and I've been doing this for sort of 35 years, I've always got friends who travel home and away with Manchester United. I mean, your away sport, I would say, is the best in the country. Your home support for Ten Hag in a difficult season, on the whole, it's just been magnificent. I've actually always thought you were fairly fan based, but I don't think certain elements of the fan base, and as you say, it might be more on social media than certainly within Old Trafford or on the road. I just don't think it's fair.
Yeah, I mean, look, I totally respect all of that, and I think the great thing about having this is that I know you wouldn't pull any punches, and you give an honest opinion on it. There's a few things from that I find, well, I'd like to come back on. I mean, I think the toxicity thing is difficult because I don't class myself as a journalist. We just started this from nothing, and it's grown into what it is. And I agree that it has become the modern media. And I think we've changed a lot over the last couple of years from maybe the first formative years where you've just got this platform and you can say what you like, and you have to start thinking and you start having conversations with respected people like yourself and having that sort of responsibility. I think the wheelie bin comment, I can't even remember it, but that's a problem for me because I will, if I'm watching a game, I would probably be far more, Rashford's recently been booed at games when he's been subbed off and stuff, which I don't agree with. So I will always try and find a comedic element to it. So when I say it's like a wheelie bin without wheels on it, I don't see it as abuse. So it's interesting that people.
Yeah, but he might.
Yeah. Exactly, that's my point. And I think
he's a human being. They're not robots, these players. Just because he's on whatever 300 grand a week, and okay, you and I would say, well, that we'll take a little bit of criticism for that, but it still must hurt, particularly when the people he wants to please most, obviously along with his family and the manager and teammates, is the fans, because he feels he's one of them. And I just don't like this, the fact that he's almost being forced into exile by this.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And look, every day is a school day, and there is a learning there. I mean, obviously, I can only give my stance on that. And also, I'm watching these games, reacting as a passionate football fan, as many people are. And I certainly think that there has been things around United over the recent years with the poor performances. Certainly, Paul Pogba has been shouted and sworn at walking off a pitch. We've seen that from the Stretford end, which you would never expect. We've seen other players get booed. And look, it definitely used to go on when I used to go and watch United in the early noughties. People can't believe that Ryan Giggs would get jeered, and he genuinely did get the fans would get frustrated with him, the David Beckham stuff. So it's an interest, and I think we have to self-reflect, and that's the whole point of having this conversation, because it can't just be everything negative towards Rashford is justified just because he's been terrible this season. I do think that it's an interesting one with Rashford because he has been so bad this season, and taking away whatever he perceives as.
But who's been good for you? I mean, I see Bruno Fernandes. I mean, and he gets criticised, but actually he looks like he's someone who's cared. Maguire, you lot were almost sort of, marching off down the road. And,
unbelievable this season, yeah.
And I think, strong character. I mean, who else has been good for you. I mean, Garnacho, clearly, Kobe Mainu, terrific, maybe one or two others, but it's not, you know, your player of the season dinner is not going to be a rammed event.
No, it's not. And I think with the thing with Rashford with me is that, and obviously you see the little wheelie bin context clips, and you see that sort of stuff. What you don't see, and we all know this happens in all walks of life, is you don't see. It's like a celebrity who gets caught out, you know, having an affair, but you don't get all, oh, he's done this for charity, this, and this. And I'm not saying I've done anything for charity, but I've always been a massive Marcus Rashford fan. Anybody who watched this channel will go, look, when the Belfast thing happened, I nearly had to shut the channel down because obviously he played against Wolves. I think 99% of our show that night was like, I was getting abused because I was saying, well, I think he should play against Wolves. Ten Hag and Man United have made a decision they're comfortable with. And I thought he played quite well against Wolves. I wanted him back. So you don't hear about that side of things because it's not going to go in the Daily Mail or whatever like that. So, but with Rashford as a player, I think the biggest frustration with him, and he should take it as a compliment, is that if he wasn't a decent player, I don't think he would get spoken about enough. I see all these stats that Marcus Rashford's the most spoken about player of Manchester United. But I do wonder about the people around him because I don't think it's helpful. I think he just takes all this negativity and he's not being told why it's there. For me personally, I think he's a light switch player. I thought last season, I remember saying he could win the Ballon d'Or in the next 2 years. The trajectory he's on, the type of player he is, if he sustains that for 2 or 3 years, and I got laughed at, but I was like, last season, I genuinely felt, and about 3 years ago as well, the disappointment from my point of view, and I think for a lot of fans, is he's just nothing like, I mean, I don't know if you watch the Coventry game, but that's a championship side and they're very good, but he's running into a brick wall. He's shooting from ridiculous angles. It's like the basics of his game have just fundamentally left him, and he's a shell of that player.
But I mean, it's interesting you mentioned the Coventry game. I mean, I was actually running the London Marathon, so I couldn't get to the game. And so, I was on the train sort of heading back north. And obviously your game was sort of delayed because it wasn't delayed, but the extra time and penalties. And there were a load of Manchester United fans sort of sitting around me, and we were having a discussion. And we actually had a conversation, not intense because they were really intelligent individuals, and he didn't get sort of emotional. But they were emotional because they were emotionally connected with the subject. But the whole Rashford thing, as you say, you know, it's a compliment but also I detect mainly a frustration because you know there's a good player in there. Was it 130 goals in? I think he's on 399 games now, sort of, and a stack of goals for England as well. He's only 26. I mean, he should be the type of player that you're throwing love at. You know, he's going through this difficult time because of, you know, as his mother pointed out, you know, the sort of the death of his cousin, passing away of a very close friend of now. Some players, excuse me, take that in their stride. You know, these personal moments that everyone goes through in life, the highs and lows, family issues, friends issues. But Marcus, he's always struck me, he hasn't necessarily got that character that he internalizes a lot. Like, he'll see this criticism, and look, it's all very well saying players just don't go on social media, but they do. There's a curiosity, and that curiosity is the same as ours, is because they're human beings. So I completely take your point about every day is a learning day. And I mean, I've made terrible mistakes in terms of criticizing players down the years. I mean, Ronaldo, the Brazilian Ronaldo, who had that great game at Old Trafford. I remember just sort of watching him once, and so actually was in the World Cup draw for Brazil. And I just made on social media, again, a mistake. I'm always screwing up on social media. Just made a comment about his weight. I personalized it when I should have sort of professionalized it and looked at him as a professional. And quite rightly, I got hammered. People were talking about he's got a thyroid problem, issues like that. So as you say, every day is a school day. And
I think that's worse than a wheelie bin, Henry.
Okay.
Well, okay. Feel better now.
Yeah. All right. Well, you're 1-0 up, and it was a mistake. And I you know, as you know, you just learn. Just I'm sure you'll learn from the wheelie bin. I learned from that Ronaldo comment.
It's and I think there's there's two things I want to ask you, because I know your time's precious. But the first thing
my time's not precious at the moment. Actually, I've left the time. So if you need any gardening or you need your wheelie bin taken out, I've got time.
Oh no, well, I'm enjoying the conversation. I'm sure everybody watching is as well. But I think that's an interesting thing. I again, you know, apparently don't like Rashford apparently, and yet we do get quite a bit of information around Rashford, not directly from him, of course, but I was told a few weeks ago that there is absolutely no way Manchester United will sell him in the summer. There's absolutely no way he wants to go. He will be here next year. And I've said to our viewers many times, if your frustration is frustration and you want him to turn the light switch on, the criticism is valid. If your frustration is because you don't like him and you want him out of this club, you're basically building your own blood pressure up to something that's just going to become very unhealthy. And maybe it will come out with comments that shouldn't be said, because I firmly believe he will be here next season. But I suppose the problem is that last season was good, this season was bad, the season before was bad, the season before was probably good. He's very much on off. You mentioned the off-field things, which we've said many a time, and anybody would agree, any player, whether it's Jadon Sancho when he had that 3 months off, Jesse Lingard, Dele Alli, these players that come out and say, look, I'm struggling, they're human beings, regardless of how much money they earn or how talented they are. But you have Cristiano Ronaldo the summer before he left, and the passing of his daughter. And, you know, the press around Manchester United weren't the most sympathetic. But Cristiano Ronaldo is probably the best, strongest mentality in the modern game.
But that's the key thing, different characters.
Yeah. So so Rashford, how does he probably never changes that. So therefore he probably never, because to be the player he could be, and I believe he could be, I think mentality and personality is absolutely key. And if he doesn't have that, then maybe there has to be an acceptance that he will be this on-off player.
But if there is consistent love or support, love's a strong word, as well as the legitimate criticism that, you know, that you will give him, that I will give him, the tracking back, the body language at times, then I think that players accept that. But I mean, the racist abuse he got, and I'm not saying that is echoed in any way in the current criticism, but the racist abuse he got when he missed the penalty with England, and around that period when the country, we know we're a slightly angry country at the moment, but a particularly angry country at that time, so post-COVID or coming out of COVID, I was shown some of the DMs that he got sent, and honestly, off the scale, that would affect anyone. The emojis, the messages, the voice notes. I mean, it was just, you know, and obviously other players got it as well. Jadon Sancho got it, Bukayo Saka. But Rashford, because of the Manchester United element, you know this, there's an envy of Manchester United. You are the biggest club in the country. You know that if you work for a media organisation, you can, you know, the headlines will always ring louder and will get more attention because it's Manchester United, because you are so huge. You and Real Madrid are the biggest clubs in the world. When I go to a Manchester United match or I write a piece about Manchester United, you can just feel the power of your club. And so Marcus Rashford or any player at Manchester United who is in the crosshairs of that at times, that cannot be easy, particularly for a young black player, particularly for a player who genuinely does care. So that hurts him even more. You know, he's not someone who's just wandered in, you know, from miles away. You know, his heart has been in Manchester United from the start. And maybe that, and, you know, that tied with his introverted nature. And I'm slightly sort of surmising on the introverted nature because, you know, that's on the couple of occasions that I've spent a little bit of time with him. That's what struck me. And he needs that support.
Well, no, I mean, the feedback, I mean, obviously we speak to people who are in and close to Rashford, and that is a consistent, that even the Belfast thing, and the person who I felt wrongly did the interview, the tell all, was like he was very quiet and you look, just because somebody's a talented footballer and the world's at their feet, the people around them can, you know, look at Gaza. I mean, Gaza was not and is not still, I mean, probably the best player I've ever seen playing in English football, but you know, he certainly wasn't, if you spend any time with him, somebody that would be able to map out PR wise his career. He was a footballer. Which is what I was going to ask you as well. One of the things that has, I suppose, frustrated, again, I think that's a good word, is that nothing's really being said about Rashford. midnight on Thursday, there is a tweet saying I'm getting abuse, or enough is enough, etc. It's not the first time that's happened. His account seemed to pick things. I mean, we had something last November where it was like, stop spreading malicious rumors. it was just a thumbnail for a morning show where it was something along the lines of Rashford future in doubt because he'd been playing badly and Garnacho was playing on the left. So the context of malicious rumours, well, it's not a rumour, it's not malicious. It was actually a conversation about Rashford's really alarmingly playing badly, and you've got Garnacho coming through. What is his future? So I don't know how much you can tell us, but the viewers were very interested around Rashford because he has had books, he's done amazing charity work. That doesn't happen because Marcus Rashford's got a bit of spare time when he's not training. Do you think, and a lot of United fans have said it, so we're not speaking out of turn, that a move might be good for him to get away from those people? I think even people have said it in the media, ex-players, but that team around him, is he in a bubble there? Is he had bad advice? What is it? Is it becoming a bit of a problem for him when he's not hitting the heights on the pitch?
I think if you're a young player stepping into football, which is full of sharks, who do you trust? And I think if you've got brothers who you trust, I can understand why. I mean, I would say probably at least a fifth, slight guess, of the England players, they are managed, or the close knit working group around them, as well as family, are blood members. They're family. So I can understand that. So I don't know enough about the brothers, but you would assume that they would absolutely care for Marcus Rashford. In terms of moving, I don't think he needs to move. I think he needs to stay, and with a bit more support, whether that's tactical, whether that's emotional, whether that's just sort of feeling loved, because, as we say, he is one of those players, and because he does love the club, and stay. I mean, you've got new owners in there, and you've got co-owners. It'd be great when the Glazers finally go. That's my only issue with Sir Jim Ratcliffe, because Mahel, you should be proud to have a co-owner who did the marathon in a fantastic time, and then got to Wembley. I quite like everything about Sir Jim Ratcliffe, but also he is a perfectionist. He has incredibly high standards, and that will filter through with Dan Ashworth, who I know, and he's an absolute brilliant signing. I mean, his garden must be looking magnificent by now. But I mean, when he comes in,
mine.
I tell you what, yeah. Well, I've got a bit of time. He will be terrific. They are appointing good people. It's the pursuit of excellence, the marginal gains, to use a Brailsford phrase, and there will be that element, and that culture will be expected around the club, on the commercial side, on all the sides, and specifically on the football side. So there will absolutely be a focus. But that focus doesn't simply rest on one underperforming exceptional player in Marcus Rashford. I mean, there are quite a few in that dressing room who really need to raise their game.
Yeah, it is interesting. I think with Rashford, biggest earner, but he's the best. He's the best player. Like that's the mantle that Manchester United gave him when they gave that contract. You've come from the youth setup, one of our own, Manc born and bred, whatever the cliche is, but he has come through it. And again, I think that's something that I would concede is a bit unfair. I think he's meant to be this, because he's 26 and he's been through it all. He's meant to be a leader in the dressing room. But if you don't have that personality, you're not going to be that leader. And I think more and more from Rashford, he's got his own things to deal with. I just think it would be fantastic if, visually you started to see the tracking back, like you've mentioned. The goals will come back, I'm sure, but it's just how the ingredients combine to get him back, because it's been a long time, Henry. I mean, I remember saying it in October that he will be scoring by Christmas, and then he wasn't, and now it's April, and I mean, the Belfast thing I don't really want to talk about, but that was almost a cry for help. I mean, I completely dismissed it and said there's no way that happened. And then when it came out, I had to sort of retract and said that has surprised me. But that felt like a cry for help. It was deliberate. You're always going to get caught. I mean, might be in a different country, but if anyone's ever been to Belfast, it's massively Manchester United centric. So
if you're saying it's a cry for help, then you are saying that there is an individual who you feel that you need, and the club need to support emotionally.
I do and I don't, because I think that, yes,
cry for help is quite a strong statement.
Yeah, but again, this is not gone out there. The wheelie bin will, but that won't. I've said it consistently that you don't go out the night before training in Belfast into the early hours unless you are really thick, which I don't think he is, and I don't think the people around him are. I just think that was, in my opinion, a cry for help. It was like, you know,
if that's part of the grieving process and the long-term grieving process over the two people close to him that he left, and it's sort of amplified by someone with a slightly introverted character, then look, what he did in Belfast was absolutely ill-judged. I don't think anyone would dispute that. That is a legitimate criticism, but I think you then have to place it into the context of what maybe he's going through. I don't know his mindset, but I know if I'd lost two people close to me, I wouldn't necessarily have a cry for help, but I might not necessarily make all the right decisions. So I think absolutely Henry, there has to be.
I've just got the door. I'll just come back to that because I've just remembered my son's at a party and he might, if he can't get in, then hold me 1 minute.
All right.
What terrible timing. Sorry about that.
Was that a cry for help at the front door?
Yeah, I thought it was him. It's not. It's some pets at home thing the wife's ordered. So right. I can't remember exactly where we were at with that, but
we're talking about the sort of the cry for help.
Yeah, I think, look, it's a strong thing to say, but I genuinely do think that. And I've said it numerous times on the United Stand that to me, I've been watching football, since the late 80s, really, when my granddad used to take me to watch it. So I've seen the Lidicas, the Gazas, the R9s, the original Ronaldo, the Zidanes. I've seen it all. And the Rashford thing is probably one of the most perplexing thing I've ever seen watching football, because it's not logical. It's just not logical to see a player of that talent just completely for such a long period of time fall off. And it's interesting what you say that if it is a cry for help, then the club and the fans should be supporting him. And I think it's correct, but I think he has had a lot of support and he's still not playing well. And it's like, we're not a charity, we're Manchester United, and you have got Garnachos and other players that are more deserving of starting him. But then you go into that, and I think Ten Hag has done a great job with Rashford. He has, there's been rumours that Rashford doesn't like Ten Hag because his mate Sancho was kicked out, which is just rumour. But Ten Hag has been very consistent to the detriment of him. I mean, people are even saying now Rashford's going to lose him his job because he always picks him. There's other people that deserve to start for him. So I think the problem with Rashford now is that he probably doesn't justify a starting place. But does that overload him even more that he's lost the thing that he values so much? But then you watch him play and picking him's not solving it.
Sport is performance related, and you're right. If he's not performing, absolutely he shouldn't be starting. All I'm saying is that there's a broader context on what to bring the best out of Marcus Rashford, and delivering him on the pitch. I think you have to bring the best out of him as an individual, and that is whether that's whether it simply is that support. And just coming back to the points that you were making about, was he distracted by the book? Books don't take too long. I mean, I've done enough books with players. They don't take too long in terms of the time actually required by the player. It might take longer for the ghostwriter to write. So he wasn't going to be distracted by that. And look, he wasn't exactly doing his life story. He was doing a book to encourage literacy levels in young kids, from what I understand of the book. And also the addressing food poverty amongst kids going into school in this country. I mean, that the club should be incredibly proud of that. I mean, I remember talking to obviously people around Rashford at the time, when in fact I rang him at home once, or someone put me through to him. And I said, "Oh, what are you up to? How's training or whatever?" And he said, "I've just come in from training, but I am actually reading a small book on the logistics of getting food from A to B." And so he was, he was very much emotionally engaged with it. But in terms of how much time that took him, I don't think it necessarily distracted him from his football. I just think because of the huge headlines, because of the huge impact, because of the huge two fingers to Boris Johnson and Downing Street at the time, it just obviously it seemed like he was spending all his time doing it, which he wasn't. He's a professional footballer. I mean, don't forget, this is someone who loves playing football. I mean, we look at him, we all love football, and he can go and do it for a living. Also, my experience of anyone who's got to the top in any profession, and particularly sport, particularly football, competitive world like the Premier League, Champions League, internationals, they've got to have some drive. They've got to have something about them that gets them there. So absolutely, he is a winner, but he needs that. So he's one of those players, coming back to it, he needs that support around him from supporters, from you with your platform too.
Yeah, and I look 100%. If he starts performing and scoring, that will start flooding back.
Yeah, but sorry, but in a way, there are some players who you almost need to rewind, and there are some players who, when they go on the pitch, they almost need that adrenaline from the crowd to drive them on. We might think that is strange. They're professionals, they're well played, they're well prepared, they go out onto the pitch, just go and deliver, and then we'll cheer. But actually, they are flesh and blood, they're human beings. And if I would say one thing to you, just remember that Marcus Rashford is a human being.
Yeah, and I think it's a great point. And that's part of the reason I wanted you to come on, because I knew, you know, we'd get the wheelie bin and stuff like that. And, you know, I think people think that we're just there to project, and it's not. We're there to learn as well. And I think as a fan base, I've been saying this for a few weeks now, it's like, he will be here next year. So all these people saying sell him or get him out of our club or drop him, I don't mind him being dropped, but there's got to be a pathway back. Like, if you drop a player, we all know it can be a kick up the backside to work your way back in, and then you come back in. And I think that what is one of the things that frustrates me the most about social media is people project their strong opinions like Ten Hag out, and then you go, okay, you're hypothetically the CEO of Manchester United and you've sacked Ten Hag. Who are you appointing now? Well, that's not my job to do that. But you're happy to project that you want to sack him, but you don't have an alternative. And this is the thing with Rashford. My end game in my frustration is that he starts scoring goals and becomes our player of the year and breaks our goal record. That's my frustration, projecting with the wheelie bin. You know, I'm trying to be comedic, but I want him to start playing well. I don't actually. The best solution is that we don't sell him and that he does go on and play well. And I think people need to grasp that. It's all right to project an opinion and a negative opinion or a strong opinion, but what do you want out of it? And I think ultimately, this is for Rashford's ears as well. Most fans want him just back playing well. It's not just get out of our club, you're rubbish, you're the worst number 10 ever. And that's just reactionary, isn't it? But I think the end game.
Yeah, but it's reactionary to a human being. I mean, we can be sort of blithely say that, and I'm sure, get a little bit of criticism on social media. Nothing compares to being in the eye of a storm like an elite footballer. And one thing I will also say about Rashford is that he seems a different individual when he reports for England. It's almost like safe haven's too strong a word, but he almost.
Well, everybody loves playing for England, don't they?
Well, they do because of the culture in the place as well. But you want that player at Manchester United as well.
Yeah, definitely. Henry, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. And if you've got any time in the future, I'm sure we could have you back on again to talk other stuff. But I think on the Rashford stuff, it's been look. I like doing things that get you thinking and reflecting, and it wasn't easy to hear some of the stuff, but I certainly think that I've said it a few times about the Rashford camp. There are people that are willing to talk and discuss this, and there are people willing to support that pathway back. The worst thing we can have, and I think when he scored against Spurs, it really upset the fans when it was like that to the fans. And it's like, that's a release from Rashford. Of course it is, but it's Manchester United, and I don't think Rashford's going to go anywhere. The fans aren't going to go anywhere. And I just think there needs to be an understanding that the pathway back is, with Rashford scoring goals, is the pathway everybody wants. It doesn't need to be toxic or I told you so. It's about everybody delivering together, and it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next few months with that.
Yeah, well, I wish him well. Just remember, he's a human being as well as an elite professional athlete.
Thanks, Henry. Fantastic. Get your comments in below. Make sure you smash a like on the video. Big thank you to Henry Winter, and we'll speak to you on the next one.